History is filled with answers, dates, names, timelines carved into textbooks. But behind those answers are questions we still haven't solved, questions sealed in stone, buried in sand, or etched into metal that refuses to decay. Some discoveries shine light on lost civilizations, others only deepen the shadows. They weren't made to confuse us, but something in their story slipped away. The meaning was lost, the context erased, and what remains is a puzzle without its key. A rust-proof pillar that shouldn't exist, a skeleton that doesn't belong to its time, writings no one can agree on, places too sacred to touch. We don't know who made them or why, and yet they persist, daring us to look closer and admit how much we don't know. These aren't legends, they're real, but their truth is still locked away. We follow the trail now, into the silence of what history won't explain. He was found not in a royal tomb, but in an anonymous side chamber, mouth agape, limbs contorted, frozen in an eternal scream. His body was wrapped in sheepskin, a material considered unclean for burial by ancient Egyptians. No inscriptions, no offerings, no honor, just silence and horror. Known today as Unknown Man E, this mummy was discovered in 1886 in the Deir el-Bahari cache, a hidden tomb that had once sheltered dozens of royal mummies relocated there by priests to protect them from grave robbers. Most were kings and queens, clearly labeled, carefully preserved, but not this one. His appearance shocked even the seasoned archaeologists who opened the coffin. Unlike the others, his body had not been embalmed properly. His organs were still in place. His skin had turned reddish-brown and leathery, his legs were bent sharply at the knees, and that face, mouth wide open, as if caught in the last moment of terror. Why was he treated so differently, and who was he? One prevailing theory links him to one of Egypt's darkest family betrayals. Around 1155 BCE, during the reign of Pharaoh Ramesses III, a conspiracy unfolded within the royal court. According to the judicial papyrus of Turin, a group of officials and harem members, including one of the pharaoh's own sons, plotted to assassinate the king. Their goal was to place the prince, Pentawere, on the throne. The conspiracy failed. Ramesses III was mortally wounded, but managed to name his successor before dying. The traitors were put on trial, and many were sentenced to death or forced suicide. What happened to Prince Pentawere is uncertain. The documents state that one of the main conspirators, the king's son, was made to take his own life. But no tomb or mummy has ever been clearly identified as his, unless some believe he is Unknown Man E. The body's hasty and disgraceful burial fits the story. Sheepskin to mark impurity, lack of proper embalming as punishment, exclusion from royal honors. A genetic study conducted in 2012 found that the Screaming Mummy and Ramesses III share the same paternal DNA lineage. If true, it suggests that this tortured body may indeed be the prince, buried not to honor him, but to erase him. And yet, his image endures. The twisted, gaping face has become one of the most haunting icons in the study of Egyptian death. Was it pain that froze his features, or poison? Execution? Something else entirely? Some scholars argue the scream is a natural post-mortem distortion, not emotional at all, but others aren't so sure, because while the body decays, the expression remains. And in that expression, we still hear a voice that never got to speak. What other ancient mysteries linger in the silence of the dead? In another part of Egypt, an even older body was unearthed, and it too challenges everything we know about human history. The sands of Egypt are best known for guarding pharaohs, pyramids, and gold, but in 1980, archaeologists digging near the village of Nazlet, Khater, unearthed something far older than any dynasty. It wasn't wrapped in linen or buried in a tomb. It lay in a shallow grave, untouched for over 35,000 years, a nearly complete human skeleton, alone in a prehistoric quarry. At first glance, the bones appeared modern. The skeleton was that of a young adult male, around 165 centimeters tall, with features not unlike those of people today. But subtle details betrayed a deeper mystery. His skull was unusually robust, with prominent brow ridges and a slightly elongated shape. His pelvis and limb proportions didn't quite match the anatomical norms of Homo sapiens. He was both familiar and strange, a human, yet not entirely. Nazlet Khater II, as he came to be called, soon ignited debate across the anthropological world. How could a skeleton with such archaic traits appear so late in the human timeline? Most individuals with similar features lived tens of thousands of years earlier, some even belonging to different human species. Yet here was a man who bore marks of deep evolutionary history, living during a period when anatomically modern humans had supposedly already populated the region. To complicate matters, nearby stone tools and artifacts found at the site revealed an unexpected level of craftsmanship. The tools were finely shaped, functional, and well adapted for quarrying. Whoever this individual was, he wasn't a primitive outlier. He belonged to a community capable of working stone with intention and skill. So what explains this contradiction? One theory suggests that Nazlet Khater II may represent a local population that retained older anatomical traits longer than others, a kind of evolutionary holdout. Another proposes interbreeding, a modern human with genetic contributions from an earlier human species, perhaps even a regional variant we've yet to identify. Some researchers have even wondered whether he descended from a migration that occurred far earlier than expected, long before most models of human movement into North Africa suggest. But these remain only theories. The truth is, no other skeleton like his has been found in the region, not before, not after. He stands alone, a solitary data point with no confirmed relatives. No DNA could be recovered to clarify his lineage, and so he remains what scientists quietly fear the most: an anomaly. Unlike the polished certainty of museum exhibits, real prehistory is messy. Bones turn up where they shouldn't. Faces reappear before their time. And sometimes, a single grave can force us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about where we came from. But Nazlet Khater isn't the only relic defying expectations. Far from the deserts of Egypt, in the heart of India, stands a towering pillar, untouched by time, untouched by rust, forged by hands that knew something we still don't. In the heart of Delhi, standing quietly amid the ruins of the Qutub complex, is a pillar that has defied both time and nature. Over 7 meters tall and weighing more than 6 tons, it is not decorated with gold or inlaid with jewels. It is iron, plain, black, ancient, and it should have rusted away long ago. But it hasn't. For over 1,600 years, the Delhi iron pillar has endured monsoon rains, intense heat, and urban pollution, yet it remains remarkably corrosion-free. Made not of modern stainless steel but of nearly pure wrought iron, the pillar resists oxidation in ways no ancient artifact should. In a world where bridges, nails, and tools fall prey to rust within decades, this column has survived untouched, and no one is entirely sure how. The pillar is believed to have been erected during the Gupta Empire, likely in the 4th or 5th century CE, and may have originally stood in central India before being relocated to Delhi centuries later. An inscription in Sanskrit on its surface praises a ruler named Chandragupta II and describes his military victories. But the real marvel lies not in what's written, but in how it was made. Ancient Indian blacksmiths used a forge welding technique to build the column, layering hot iron in a way that created a protective passive film over time. This thin layer, composed of iron hydrogen phosphate, has shielded the pillar from environmental damage. But this explanation, while technically sound, doesn't fully explain the consistency of the craftsmanship or the purity of the iron, both astonishing for the era. Metallurgists have studied the pillar for decades, attempting to reverse engineer its secrets. How did Gupta-era craftsmen create such high-quality iron on such a large scale? Why did they choose to do it at all, and for what purpose? Some speculate the pillar was meant as a Dvaja Stamba, a flagstaff in honor of a deity, or as a cosmic axis connecting heaven and earth. Others suggest it was a demonstration of imperial power, showing off not just conquest, but technological supremacy. More fringe theories have emerged over the years, of course, from suggestions of ancient alien knowledge to lost metallurgical formulas passed down from even older civilizations. But no wild claim has ever been needed to make the pillar remarkable. It is already extraordinary by its very existence. Even modern engineers admit they couldn't easily reproduce it today, not without advanced machinery and precision control over materials. And that's the real mystery. The knowledge to create something so durable seems to have existed in an age when it shouldn't have. And then, just as mysteriously, it disappeared. Today, tourists walk past the pillar without a second glance. Pigeons rest on it. Some wrap their arms around it, hoping for blessings, but few stop to ask the question it quietly demands. How did it last, when everything else turned to dust? Not every artifact leaves behind metal and monuments. Some leave only symbols, carved into stone, carried across continents, their meaning hotly debated. Thousands of kilometers away in Tennessee, one such object was found buried in a Native American mound. The discovery wasn't glamorous. No golden mask, no towering monument, just a flat, dark stone pulled from the soil of a burial mound in Tennessee. It might have gone unnoticed forever, a relic buried with copper bracelets and bone. But decades later, it began to speak in a language no one expected, and the controversy hasn't stopped since. At first, the markings were interpreted as Cherokee. It made sense. The mound belonged to the Hopewell tradition, and the Cherokee were known to inhabit the region. The stone was catalogued and largely forgotten, a footnote in early American archaeology. But nearly a century later, in 1970, a Semitic languages scholar named Cyrus Gordon noticed something strange. The characters didn't match the Cherokee syllabary at all. Instead, they bore a striking resemblance to Paleo-Hebrew, an early form of Hebrew used around 2,000 years ago. The inscription, when reversed, appeared to read, "For the Jews." That single reinterpretation shattered the stone's obscurity and thrust it into a global debate. Could Semitic people have crossed the Atlantic in ancient times? Was this stone proof of pre-Columbian contact between the Old World and the Americas? Proponents argued that the burial context, deep within a sealed mound, meant the artifact had to be authentic. If it had been planted, how could it have ended up buried beneath copper items and human remains? The implications were enormous. If genuine, the Bat Creek stone would force a rewrite of early American history, suggesting contact between Middle Eastern cultures and Native Americans centuries before Columbus. But critics weren't convinced. In the 1990s, researchers noticed that the stone's inscription closely resembled a Paleo-Hebrew alphabet, printed in an 1870s reference book published before the excavation. The match was too precise. It seemed likely that whoever carved the Bat Creek stone had copied it from that exact chart. Worse, questions began to surface about the Smithsonian's own methods at the time. Cyrus Thomas wasn't an archaeologist by modern standards. Excavation techniques were crude and documentation was often minimal. Could Thomas, or someone close to him, have planted the stone, or simply misunderstood what he found? The Smithsonian quietly shifted its stance, eventually listing the Bat Creek stone as a likely forgery. Mainstream scholars now regard it as a 19th century hoax, either deliberate or accidental. Still, the mystery endures. The stone resides in a museum housed in glass, watched by eyes that see different things. To some, it is evidence of forgotten voyages and hidden truths. To others, it is a cautionary tale, a reminder that even in science we sometimes see what we want to believe. But while this stone's meaning is still debated, another object, found not in a grave but in the hands of a vanished community, presents a mystery just as silent and even stranger in its simplicity. Thousands of smooth stone balls, all crafted by Neolithic hands. High on the limestone slopes of southern Cyprus lie the ruins of one of the oldest known human settlements in Europe, Khirokitia. This Neolithic village, inhabited as early as 7000 BCE, was once a bustling hub of stone houses, narrow pathways, and terraced farms. But among the remnants of everyday life, pottery, tools, bones, archaeologists uncovered something else. Thousands of nearly perfect stone balls. Most are small enough to fit in a hand. Others are heavier, shaped with surprising precision. Some are smooth, others grooved or pitted. They were carved from local rock, chalk, limestone, diabase. Many were found scattered between houses, clustered in odd arrangements or buried under floors. But nowhere in the site's long timeline, stretching nearly 2 millennia, do they come with clear instructions. What were they for? Some researchers have suggested they were tools, perhaps used in food preparation or construction. Others believe they served as weights, possibly in primitive balance systems. A few larger ones may have functioned as projectiles, but none of these theories fit the full picture. The sheer quantity, the variability in size and finish, and their odd placements around the site make it hard to pin them down to any single use. One of the more intriguing patterns lies in their deliberate grouping. In some homes, multiple balls were found arranged in distinct configurations, 3 in a line or in a tight triangle, sometimes near doorways or hearths. Could they have been symbolic? Were they protective charms, status markers, or ritual objects? No two houses share the exact same setup, yet the presence of stone balls is consistent across the entire village. The people of Khirokitia left no written records, no petroglyphs or markings that might explain their customs. What little we know comes from excavation and inference. They built their homes with rounded walls, buried their dead beneath floors, and created a tightly organized, fortified settlement. Everything about them suggests structure, purpose, control. And yet, these stone balls resist explanation, like an untranslatable phrase in the language of their lives. The mystery deepens when one considers their sudden disappearance. Later, Neolithic communities in Cyprus, including those that succeeded the Khirokitian culture, show no similar use of stone spheres. It was not a tradition that evolved or faded gradually, it simply ended. Why these objects appear in such abundance only to vanish entirely remains unanswered. In recent years, the balls have drawn comparisons to similar finds elsewhere, Scotland's carved stone spheres, for instance, but no direct link has ever been established. The idea of universal prehistoric symbols is seductive, but risky. Cultures separated by oceans and centuries may share form, but not meaning. Today, the stone balls of Khirokitia are locked away in museum drawers or laid out under glass, catalogued but not understood. To hold one is to feel the weight of something deeply human and completely unknown. A shape repeated so many times must have meant something. But what? As the stone spheres remain silent, another mystery awaits far to the east, one not carved by hands, but shaped by the earth itself. On a sacred mountain in Sri Lanka, a single footprint leaves believers and skeptics alike searching for answers. High above the mist-covered forests of central Sri Lanka, a lonely summit rises, Adam's Peak. At 2,243 meters above sea level, the mountain has drawn pilgrims for over 1,000 years, but they don't climb it for the view. Near the top lies a shallow depression pressed into the rock, shaped unmistakably like a human foot and far larger than any human could leave. Roughly 1.8 meters long and deeply embedded in stone, the mark is known by many names and claimed by many faiths. To Buddhists, it is the sacred footprint of the Buddha himself, made during a miraculous visit to the island. To Hindus, it belongs to Shiva, lord of the dance, who stamped his presence on the mountaintop. Christians and Muslims believe it marks the spot where Adam, the first man, set foot on earth after being cast from Eden. Each tradition tells a different story. Each one is certain. The footprint is enshrined in a small temple, protected by a roof and surrounded by bells, shrines, and offerings. For centuries, pilgrims have made the arduous journey up thousands of stone steps to pay homage, some barefoot, some chanting, some carrying candles through the pre-dawn darkness to reach the peak by sunrise. At daybreak, shadows stretch across the landscape below in the shape of a triangle, a natural phenomenon often interpreted as another sign of the mountain's divinity. But beneath the reverence lies a puzzle. Is the footprint a natural formation shaped by erosion and human imagination? Or was it carved, and if so, by whom and when? Geologists have long debated the origin of the mark. Some believe it is a naturally weathered indentation, later modified by ancient hands to emphasize its shape. Others argue it was entirely man-made, possibly during the Anuradhapura period over 1,000 years ago, when the site became a major center of pilgrimage. But no definitive dating has ever been established. The rock has no inscription, no signature, no context, just the outline of something unmistakably human, embedded in timeless stone. What gives the footprint its power isn't just its shape, it's the weight of belief layered on top of it. Different cultures, separated by faith and language, converged on the same symbol. Somehow they all saw themselves in it. The mark became a mirror. Even Marco Polo mentioned Adam's Peak in his travels, writing of a miraculous footprint high in the mountains of Ceylon. Later, European explorers speculated wildly, some calling it a relic of a giant race, others dismissing it as clever fakery. But no one left indifferent. To this day, the pilgrimage continues. By torchlight, families and strangers climb together. The journey is long, the air grows thin, and the body tires. But when the summit is reached and the footprint appears beneath a haze of incense and sunrise, the silence says more than any scripture. Still, for all its spiritual gravity, the footprint remains physically unexplained. And it raises a deeper question. What else might the ancient world have left behind, hidden not in plain sight but deliberately sealed away? In Japan, massive tombs shaped like keyholes dominate the landscape, and yet no one knows what lies within, because no one is allowed to look. Scattered across the islands of Japan lie some of the largest and least understood burial structures in the world. From above, They appear unmistakable. Colossal mounds shaped like keyholes, with rounded fronts and squared backs, surrounded by moats and often guarded by thick forests. They are the Kofun, imperial tombs built between the 3rd and 7th centuries CE. And though they've watched over the landscape for more than 1,000 years, their contents remain a tightly held secret. Some of these tombs rival the Egyptian pyramids in scale. The Daisen Kofun, believed to be the final resting place of Emperor Nintoku, measures over 480 meters in length, longer than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Others are smaller, but still imposing, clustered across the Kansai region and beyond. Together, they form a landscape of death and memory on a scale unmatched in early Japanese history. What lies inside them? We don't know. Because for more than a century, the Japanese Imperial Household Agency has forbidden any full-scale archaeological excavation of the keyhole tombs believed to belong to emperors or royal family members. The reason given: to preserve the sanctity of the imperial ancestors. These are not historical sites to be studied. They are sacred spaces, inviolable. A few Kofun that are not designated imperial or are considered lower status have been partially explored. Inside, archaeologists have found clay figures called haniwa, bronze mirrors, weapons, armor, and decorative items, hinting at the complex rituals surrounding death and power during the Kofun period. Some tombs have inner chambers lined with massive stones and painted walls, but even these raise more questions than they answer. The forbidden Kofun, however, remain sealed. No one knows what kind of treasures or texts, or even human remains, might lie within. Could they contain evidence of ancient political alliances, religious transitions, or even foreign influences? Could they rewrite parts of Japanese history? We don't know, and we may never know. The tension between archaeology and reverence is not new, but here, it has created a wall no excavation can breach. Japanese scholars must walk a careful line, respecting tradition while still yearning to uncover the deeper truths of their past. A few have called for limited access using modern, non-invasive technology, ground-penetrating radar, remote sensors, but even these efforts face resistance. To outsiders, the refusal can seem frustrating, but to many in Japan it reflects something older and deeper, the belief that some knowledge is not meant to be disturbed, that certain doors, once sealed, should remain so. And so the tombs sit, vast and quiet, blending into the forests around them. Keyholes to secrets we're not allowed to unlock, monuments to power, and silence. We dig, measure, translate, and reconstruct, hoping to bring the past into focus. And yet, some truths remain just out of reach, not because we aren't looking, but because the answers are gone, sealed, or never meant to be found. Each of these artifacts tells a story, or hides one. A twisted body buried in shame, a skeleton too old and strange for its time, a pillar that resists rust, a stone that speaks in disputed tongues, spheres without purpose, a footprint too perfect to be coincidence, and tombs that no one is allowed to enter. Each one dares us to ask, what are we missing? We don't always need myths to find wonder. Sometimes the real world is more silent and more stubborn than fiction. Some artifacts whisper, others refuse to speak at all. If this journey left you curious, don't let it end here. Like the video, share it with someone who questions the past, and leave a comment with the mystery that haunts you most. Subscribe for more stories History Won't Explain, and when you're ready, explore the next chapter waiting on our channel.